Hello and welcome. It's Monday, the 28th of April. You're tuned in to our 10 a.m. newscast here on ARIRANG TV. Let's take a look at what's making the headlines. Divers have combed through just over half of the Sewol-ho ferry's compartments, excluding those without passengers. Authorities also seek the parents' consent to use explosives and power tools to speed up the search. Amid the national outrage over the government's slow response to the disaster, President Park is expected to swing the axe and make sweeping changes to her cabinet. Plus, one European military observer has been freed in eastern Ukraine, where pro-Russian separatists are holding the rest of the team who were detained last Friday. Search and rescue operations have been halted due to bad weather conditions off the southwestern coast of Korea, where the Sewol-ho ferry sank almost 2 weeks ago now. The number of confirmed deaths currently stands at 188, while 114 others, mostly teenage high school students, remain missing, presumed dead. Rescue teams are trying to come up with different ideas on how to get deeper inside the vessel and recover every last victim. Let's go straight to our Kim Ji-yeon, who joins us from the news center. Ji-yeon, what's the latest?
Hello, Mark. The authorities are considering using more tools to speed up the search operations. The government says divers will use compact explosives to take out debris that is blocking passageways within the ferry, but only when the parents of the missing students give their consent. You can imagine what the parents are going through. They want to see their loved ones as fast as they can, but they also don't want the bodies to be damaged. The explosives will speed up the operations, but there is the concern that it may damage bodies trapped inside. Authorities are saying they're starting to use metal cutters to open doors within the vessel. The move looks to address criticism that the search operation is taking too long, one of the major complaints made by the families of the missing passengers. Up to now, the divers have completed their search of just over half of the cabins. It has recovered bodies from around 35 of the cabins as of Sunday, out of the 64 cabins that are under its search plan.
Well, Ji-yeon, we can just see there how tough the conditions must be for the divers. Now, turning over to what the prosecution is doing. On the prosecution special team there on the ferry sinking raided the Mokpo Coast Guard station. Tell us more about that.
You're right, Mark. Prosecutors and police investigating the case suspect officers there neglected their duty to effectively deal with the situation in the early stages of the rescue. The Mokpo Coast Guard has been accused of wasting precious minutes by asking a student who made the first emergency call from the ferry whether he knew the coordinates of where the vessel was. This comes as prosecutors raided maritime traffic control centers on Jeju and Chindo Island over the weekend. They are suspected of neglecting their duties in the early stages of the ferry sinking and giving up their responsibility for an area that they should have been monitoring. I'm Kim Ji-yeon, and I'll come back with more updates later today.
Yes, thank you, Ji-yeon. Now, search teams say they'll use floating buoys in an attempt to stop bodies drifting away from the accident site. The buoys will be used to detect various environmental factors such as the wind direction, speed, water temperature and water pressure to convey information in real time about the possible location of bodies that may have been carried away by strong sea currents. Among the 188 bodies recovered so far, around 40 were found outside of the Sewol-ho ferry. There's also currently a net 13 kilometers long surrounding the accident site. The search team is also expanding its operations to a 60-kilometer radius around the accident site. So we find ourselves almost 2 weeks now after this awful ferry disaster, and well over 100 people remain trapped inside this Sewol-ho ferry. It has many people, including the families of the missing, asking what is taking so long. Our Hwang Ji-ye reports.
Efforts to find and retrieve the bodies of the missing on the sunken Sewol-ho ferry are being hampered by obstacles inside the vessel. There's a lot of debris and furniture inside, and it's piling up on the left side, which is laying at the bottom of the ocean at a 90-degree tilt. The search team had to break through cabin windows to get in and must pass through narrow passageways filled with debris.
Chairs, beds, and tables are blocking doors and the diver's passage.
Kim Ji-yeon, the Navy colonel and search officer, says that heavy objects are all piled up on the left side, and in addition to the water pressures, it's making it impossible to search every cabin of the ferry. Unfavorable weather conditions and the oil spilling from the ferry are also slowing the search. And as time goes by, the hope of finding passengers trapped inside the vessel is fading. Hwang Ji-yeon, ARIRANG News.
The rain much of the nation has been seeing didn't stop thousands of people from saying their last goodbyes to the victims on Sunday. More than 6,000 people paid their respects at a memorial altar set up in the Seoul Plaza in front of City Hall. City officials say the altar will remain in place until all of those who died in the disaster are returned to their families in Ansan. Starting Tuesday, an official memorial will be set up in Hwarang Park in Ansan, the city most touched by the ferry disaster. Staying in Ansan, Danwon High School resumes classes for all 3 grade levels on this Monday, some 13 days after the tragic ferry accident that took the lives of so many people there. The class will provide counselling and other psychological support services to help students grieving for their friends. Park Ji-won reports.
A grief-stricken Danwon High School resumes classes for all grades on Monday. The school has been closed since the tragic ferry accident on April 16th. Only the senior class was in school last week. On Monday, the freshman class and the 13 second-year students who did not go on the ill-fated field trip returned to a school that has suffered a devastating loss. To help students cope with the tragedy, the school offers various kinds of counseling support. The special programs will be led by dozens of psychotherapists and art therapists. The 75 second-year students who survived the disaster remain on leave, and it has not yet been decided when they will return to their studies. The decision will be made by doctors and the students' parents, who will also discuss programs for helping them cope with the loss of their classmates.
It is better for them to be together. One of the common programs in a situation like this is to have a camp for the students.
The parents of the surviving students plan to have their children participate in such a healing program, which will be staffed by therapists, medical doctors, and education experts. Park Ji-won, ARIRANG News. Said that a team of South Korea.
Get connected to Korea and the world. Join us every weekday for the latest developments out of Korea, Asia, and beyond. On air, on your mobile, and online, we lead the way every day. ARIRANG News.
To try and resolve the crisis in Ukraine, the European Union also offers $15 billion. President Park Geunhye has approved Prime Minister Chung Hongwons' resignation, but only after the ferry disaster has been brought under control. Amid the national outrage over the government's slow response to the tragedy, the president is expected to swing the axe and make sweeping changes to her cabinet. Ji Myung-gil reports.
Prime Minister Chung Hongwon, the nation's second in command, made the bombshell announcement Sunday that he would step down to take responsibility for the Sewol-ho ferry disaster. President Park Geun-hye said she would accept the resignation only after the incident has been brought under control. Chung's resignation has raised speculation a cabinet reshuffle is on the way to appease public anger and give the Park administration a fresh impetus. Political watchers say a number of high-level officials could get the chop, including Security and Public Administration Minister Kang Byung-gyu, Education Minister Seo Nam-soo, and Oceans and Fisheries Minister Lee Ju-young. The ruling Saenuri Party said the measures will give momentum to reforms in the country to prevent a similar disaster occurring again. The main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy has slammed Chung's decision, calling it irresponsible and accusing him of abandoning his duties. The parliamentary committee has decided to deliberate on 7 bills related to safety at sea, while the Saenuri Party plans to propose new bills to eradicate bureaucratic connections with related maritime industries. The MPAD is also preparing to unveil its own ideas on how to improve public safety. As the June 4th local elections edge ever closer, President Park's tumbling approval rating could damage the Saenuri party's chances. The opposition party is expected to continue attacking the ruling party over Chung's resignation and his handling of the ferry disaster. Kim Ji-yeon, ARIRANG News.
According to South Korean government sources, a prospective trilateral military information sharing pact with Tokyo and Washington could be limited to information on North Korea's nuclear program and missiles. Efforts to establish a trilateral deal between the three countries have thus far been hampered by historical and territorial tensions between Seoul and Tokyo. There are Washington-Seoul and Washington-Tokyo military information sharing agreements, but no such arrangement between Seoul and Tokyo. North Korea has criticized South Korea and the United States for a recent bilateral summit between the two, saying it will not tolerate any challenges to the regime. The North's criticisms are mainly targeted at South Korean President Park Geunhye. North Korean state media reported on Sunday that President Park, during the summit with US President Barack Obama, had spoken ill of the North Korean regime and its dignity, as well as its nuclear development and goal of military and economic growth. The North also said President Park has chosen a path of confrontation and war with Pyongyang, and the North will keep going its own way. President Park sent a warning to the North at a joint press briefing following the summit, saying that any provocations from the North will result in new international sanctions and pressure on the regime. Now, China has unveiled a set of documents revealing crimes committed by the Japanese military during its invasion of China in the early 1930s. The newly published book, called Irrefutable Evidence, comes at a time of extremely sour relations between Beijing and Tokyo. Kim Ji-yeon reports.
China has released once confidential documents revealing acts of extreme brutality committed by the Japanese military during its invasion of China, including the sexual enslavement of women and the Nanjing massacre. China's Jilin Provincial Archives released 89 documents, which consist of letters written by Japanese soldiers, newspaper articles, and other military files. The documents have been put together into a book titled Irrefutable Evidence. The Beijing News said 25 documents showed women forced into sexual slavery were from China, South and North Korea, as well as a number of South Asian countries. Another Chinese media outlet said the documents show that the total number of comfort women came to about 400,000, half of which were Chinese, while more than 140,000 were from the Korean peninsula. It added that one comfort woman had attended to 178 Japanese soldiers in just 10 days at a comfort station in Nanjing. In regards to the Nanjing massacre, the Beijing News noted that a Japanese newspaper reported that the Japanese military killed some 85,000 people in just 3 days. It added that Japanese military files showed that the population of Nanjing fell to 335,000 from roughly 1 million between December 1937 and January the following year. One letter showed a soldier referring to killing the people as slicing bean curds. Other documents were related to the transfer of prisoners to the notorious Japanese military unit 731, where brutal experiments on living people were carried out. Kim Ji-yeon, ARIRANG News.
Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has vowed to continue explaining his country's stance on the comfort women issue after US President Barack Obama last week described Japan's wartime system of sex slavery as a, quote, terrible violation of human rights. During a report by Japan's Kyodo news agency on Sunday, Abe said words cannot describe what the women went through and that it's heartbreaking to think about it. Abe also said human rights were violated during wartime, including those of women, and that Japan will contribute to making the 21st century a period without human rights abuses. Abe's remarks represent a significant step back from his long-held stance on this issue. Now, U.S. President Barack Obama's Asia tour has taken him to Japan, South Korea, Malaysia, and we'll see him in the Philippines later on this Monday. Despite skipping China, however, the New York Times says Washington's eye remains firmly on Beijing. The U.S. Daily says Obama's tour of the region has reassured America's allies of its support while discouraging the Chinese from trying to open a second front on the Pacific Rim. Obama vowed to defend Japan from territorial disputes with China, but urged Tokyo to show restraint. In South Korea, he pledged to defend Seoul from any threats from Pyongyang, China's traditional ally. Some experts view Obama's visit as a containment tour, skipping Beijing, but Obama said he welcomed a rising China as long as it was peaceful. Now, Korean food and drink, well, one drink at least, is beginning to take British supermarkets by storm. According to an article in the British daily The Times, sales of the Korean distilled liquor soju have increased by 42% at Waitrose supermarkets compared to last year. It says sales have been boosted by Korean rapper Psy, who describes soju as his best friend in recent commercials. Chinese cabbage used to make kimchi, as well as sesame seeds and tofu, are also flying off the shelves. As shoppers look for healthy meal options, the spiking sales come amid predictions Korea could become one of the world's top 10 food exporters by 2030. Time now for a look through the international headlines we are following at this hour. For that, we connect live to our Eunice Kim standing by at the news centre. Very good morning to you, Eunice. Now, pro-Russian separatists abducted European monitors over the weekend, but we're hearing that one has been set free.
Hello, Mark. That's right. That freed observer was from Sweden and had apparently been suffering from diabetes. But at least 7 other Europeans and several Ukrainians remain in the militants' custody. The group of military monitors were taken Friday local time outside of the flashpoint city of Slavyansk during a standoff between the separatists and Kiev's forces. The inspectors were from the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe and were in Ukraine to help implement an international agreement to disarm illegal militia and to empty out occupied buildings. The detained, as you see there, were paraded in a news conference on Sunday, and the self-declared mayor of Slavyansk, Vyacheslav Ponomarev, declared them prisoners of war, claiming they were NATO spies and that he could consider a swap deal for detained pro-Russian activists. Palestinian leader Mahmoud Abbas has denounced the Holocaust as, quote, the most heinous crime in modern human history. It is one of the most strongly worded criticisms by an Arab leader, and it came on Sunday on the eve of Holocaust Remembrance Day in response to a question by an American rabbi who heads a Jewish-Muslim interfaith group. The Palestine Liberation Organization called on Israel to return to the peace talks, but Israeli leader Benjamin Netanyahu told CNN Abbas was likely carrying out damage control and retorted that Abbas should tear up his pact with Hamas, as there would be no negotiation with a government backed by a group that does not recognize Israel. And turning to Egypt next, where a court has sentenced 11 supporters of ousted President Mohamed Morsi to prison terms ranging from 5 to 88 years. The sentences came down as punishment to a string of demonstrations that followed Morsi's removal last year. The same court in Minya had handed down death sentences to more than 500 last month. This as the military-backed government continues to crack down against Islamists, including the Muslim Brotherhood, labeled a terrorist group. And finally, the Catholic Church welcomed 2 new saints as Pope Francis canonized his predecessors, John XXIII and John Paul II, during Sunday's Mass. Hundreds of thousands packed the St. Peter's Square area to witness the historic dual canonization. And in another first, Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI, who retired last year, was also present for the proclamation. During his homily, Pope Francis said the saints were courageous leaders who withstood the tragedies of the 20th century.
And good morning to you all as we kick things off with some good news from the PGA Zurich Classic, as South Korea's No Sung-yeol was able to claim his first PGA title after shooting a 19 under par overall, claiming the title by 2 strokes. Now with the win, the 23-year-old gets an automatic ticket to the Players' Championship. And of course, staying with golf, for rookies in any sports, your first win is always a memorable one. And that's why for 19-year-old Baek Yu-jung, her first KLPGA victory was an emotional one. At the KLPGA Nexon Masters, the 19-year-old finishes off the last round with 6 birdies, 1 bogey, and 1 double bogey. Good enough to finish 9 under par overall to claim her first KLPGA title of her career. While it was a fierce battle between Baek and last season's top star Chung Hongwons, 22-year-old Chung Hongwons would finish second to the rookie after collapsing late in the last round. And now moving over to some Sunday's KBO action, the NC Dinos shut out the Tusan Bears 6-0, with the Lotte Giants beating the SK Wyverns 3-1, and the Samsung Lions hang on to beat the Nexon Heroes 2-1. Meanwhile, let's take a look at the struggling LG Twins take on the Kia Tigers. And of course, going into the game here, just a brilliant pitcher's duel between Kia's In Jun-sup and LG's Corey Riordan, as both pitchers throws blanks across the board. Now, both teams do go scoreless until the 8th inning of the game. Kia's Kim Ji-yeon at bat. This one driven to deep left center field, and there it goes, gone. A solo shot puts the Kia Tigers up 1-0. By the bottom of the inning, with a man on second, Chung Hee-yoon singles to left, and RBI single ties the ballgame 1-1. Next play, here we have men on first and third. Lee Byung-gyu grounds out to second. Good enough to score Im Jae-chul, and LG has the lead 2-1. 9th inning, Bong Jung-gun comes in for the save as the LG Twins take this game 2-1. And now shifting over to some Sunday's KLeague Classic action, the Pohang Steelers crushed the Incheon United 3-0, and the Ulsan Hyundai Tigers draw against Sangju Sangmu 1-1. Meanwhile, let's take a look at the super match between FC Seoul and Suwon Samsung Blue Wings. Of course, with over 29,000 fans showing up to the Suwon World Cup Stadium, the atmosphere is absolutely insane, as Suwon comes out aggressive throughout the first half with 7 shots, but none of which finds the back of the net. Now, both teams go scoreless going to the second half of the match, but it's Escudero in the 77th minute sending one past the goalkeeper, and that's all the goal in this match, as FC Seoul beats Suwon 1-0. Now, the NBA playoffs is in full swings, but Donald Sterling, who's the owner of the LA Clippers, is under fire for his racist comments that were taped. And while many speculated that his own team would boycott their next game, turns out they won't. After a tape was leaked with Donald Sterling telling his girlfriend not to bring any African Americans to his games, players and coaches discussed boycotting their next game, but have decided not to play. Of course, while Sterling will not be on hand during Game 4, NBA Commissioner Adam Silver plans to further investigate the issue, with a punishment set to be handed down soon. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day, and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Well, it will be rainy and a bit chilly day today, and weather conditions over in Jindo is looking tough. Winds blowing at 8 to 13 meters per second, and waves will also get higher in the afternoon, expected to reach 2.5 meters high at the most, and heavy rain is expected of about 50 millimeters in that area. But, you know, not only in Jindo, the rest of the country have been receiving showers from yesterday, and it seems like regions down south will see on and off heavy showers during the day, so please be prepared for that and watch out for slippery roads. And this band of rain will drag down the temperatures even lower than yesterday. High in Seoul will only hike up to 15 degrees Celsius. So if you felt a bit chilly yesterday, be sure to dress warmer today. With that in mind, here are the readings for today. The afternoon high in Seoul and Daegu will rise to 15, while Gwangju peaks to 18, and Busan should climb to 16 later in the day. Now for other regions, it looks like down on Jeju will reach to 19, Daejeon peak at 16, and Dokdo should see a high of 14, while Mount Kumgang tops out at 11. Well, that's all for now. Don't forget to have a small umbrella handy, and I'll be back with more updates afternoon.
Thank you very much, Ji-yeon, and that's all for now. We'll be back at noon Korea time. In the meantime, you can always catch up with what's been happening on our website, arirang.co.kr/news.